I knew she was going to fire me before she said my name. You work a place like Ralston Creek long enough, you learn the difference between a hard morning and a bad season. That day had the feel of something getting cut loose on purpose. Not cattle, not a contract, a person. I had been on that ranch 20 years, and before that I'd been hauling feed, fixing water lines, and learning from men who talked more with their hands than their mouths. By the time Wade Ralston got old enough to start missing small things, I was already catching them before he did. Which pasture could handle another week? Which calves needed pulling early? Which buyer in Austin liked to sound tough on the phone and then paid full as long as the boxes landed right? I knew the ranch from gate chain to ledger, even if my name was never on the sign. At home, my life was a lot less solid than people thought. My grandson Michael was 16 and living with me in the little stone house on the south edge of the property because his mother had been drifting for years and nobody trusted next month anymore. The house came with my contract. Lose the job, and I didn't just lose a desk or a truck. I started a clock. Michael knew it too, even though he acted like he didn't. The first week after Wade was gone, his daughter came in wearing pressed denim, clean boots, and the kind of calm face people use when they plan to move fast and don't want anybody slowing them down. Caroline Ralston, 32, sharp as a wire, pretty in a way that made men stand straighter around her, though she didn't seem to notice or care. She had spent years in finance and consulting and came back talking about margin discipline, brand expansion, operational drag, and decision velocity like the ranch had been waiting all this time for better vocabulary. I gave her room at first. Grief makes people strange. But by the second week, she was already talking about centralizing purchasing, changing feed suppliers, trimming older staff, and putting every moving part into new reporting software her young operations boys kept calling a platform. It's not a platform, I told her in the main office one morning. It's cows, trucks, heat, mud, timing, and men who quit if you talk to them like they're line items. She looked up from her tablet like I had just proven her point. And that right there is the problem, Boone. Every conversation with you turns into folklore. It turns into experience. It turns into delay. That was the first clean hit between us. After that, it came daily. She wanted to cut a long-time feed vendor because a larger group out of Fort Worth offered cleaner terms on paper. I told her paper didn't deliver hay in August when half the county was short. She wanted a deeper call on a breeding line I knew still held up in heat. I told her the spreadsheet was reading last year and the pasture was reading next month. She wanted weekly performance reviews with the foreman. I told her Ramon had worked there 19 years, and if she embarrassed him in front of some kid with a laptop, he'd leave and take half the crew's trust with him. She didn't like that I kept being right in ways that didn't fit her language. And I didn't like the way she kept treating judgment like disloyalty. Things finally broke in the sale barn office on a Thursday afternoon. 3 foremen were there. So was Denise from the books, 2 drivers, and one of Caroline's consultant boys leaning against the wall like he already owned the place. Caroline had a new staffing chart in her hand. She started talking about restructuring authority, reducing redundant oversight, and creating direct reporting lines to ownership. Then she looked at me. Effective immediately, she said, we're moving in a different direction operationally. Nobody moved. I asked, you doing this here? I am. Her voice stayed cool. Your resistance has become a liability. I let that sit for a second. My resistance is the reason half this place still works. Her jaw tightened, just enough for me to see it. Turn in your truck, your keys, and any ranch records by end of day. That room went so still I could hear the old ice machine clicking in the back. Ramon looked at the floor. Denise went pale. One of the drivers actually took off his cap. Not because I was special, because everybody in that room knew what she had really done. She thought she had cut out an obstacle. What she had actually done was pull the pin on the one piece holding 50 other pieces together. I took my keys off my belt and set them on the desk one at a time. Office, fuel shed, main gate, south storage, truck. Caroline didn't blink. I said, quiet enough to make her listen. Your father trusted me because this ranch does not tell the truth all at once. It tells it late, usually when it's expensive. I knew her pride would cost the ranch. Was I right to walk away, or should I have stayed and fought for the men I was leaving behind? What would you do in my boots? Let me know below. For the first time, something shifted in her face. Not doubt. Not yet. Just anger with a crack in it. Then I walked out past the pens, past the trucks, past men who suddenly didn't know where to put their eyes. By the time I reached the road, the whole ranch already understood something Caroline didn't. She hadn't fired an old employee. She had just broken the spine of the business. For about 3 weeks, it looked like she might get away with it. That was the worst part. The reports started coming out cleaner. Fewer handwritten notes. Tighter purchasing approvals. Daily dashboards emailed before sunrise. Caroline's new people loved charts. They loved color-coded status calls and phrases like accountability structure. From a distance, Ralston Creek looked sharper than ever. Same gates. Same trucks. Same black cattle moving across the same grass. But I could feel the drift even from outside it. I was doing short-term work for a smaller place east of town, helping an older couple who'd lost their son and needed somebody to steady things through spring. Good people. Honest work. But every time I crossed Highway 29 and saw one of our trailers moving at the wrong hour, it sat in my chest like a stone. At home, Michael kept pretending not to notice the stack of envelopes on the kitchen counter. Insurance. Utility bill. A letter about the house terms under my old contract. 90 days. That was the grace period. After that, the place we lived in went back under ranch control unless Caroline renewed it. Michael read the letter when he thought I wasn't looking, then asked if I wanted him to quit school and pick up more hours at the feed store. I told him no so hard he got quiet for the rest of dinner. Meanwhile, the cracks started small, exactly how real damage starts. First, the new feed contract. Caroline had switched from a local vendor to a larger supplier that promised better pricing and cleaner scheduling. On paper, it looked smart. In practice, buried inside the agreement were delivery windows broad enough to be useless and substitution language loose enough to invite trouble. One week, they sent a ration close enough to pass a screen and wrong enough to put a whole group off intake. Nothing dramatic. Just enough uneven gain to throw off timing on cattle already aimed at a premium restaurant program. Then came Ramon. I heard about that one at the co-op. Caroline dressed him down in front of 2 junior managers over pen maintenance and labor allocation, like he was a lazy foreman and not a man who had kept that south section together through 3 dry years and a wildfire scare. He finished the day, went home, and never came back. When Ramon left, he didn't just leave a vacancy. He took confidence with him. A week later, one of the Austin Chef accounts got a shipment that missed spec. Wrong weight profile. Too much inconsistency in the cuts. Not a disaster to anybody who doesn't understand that business. To the people who do, it was a warning shot. Premium buyers don't like surprises. They like trust. One bad delivery makes them start returning calls slower. Then she got hit from 2 sides at once. A private outfit out of San Antonio started sniffing around local restaurant accounts, offering slightly lower pricing and polished promises about scale. At the same time, the bank started leaning harder on the ranch's operating line. Wade had always managed those relationships with history and nerve. Caroline had numbers, but now the numbers were wobbling in places she didn't fully understand yet. Cleaner reporting cuts both ways. Once the bank saw inconsistency in fulfillment and labor churn, their tone changed. Still, she pushed harder. She brought in route optimization for transport. Good phrase. Bad timing. One load got dispatched on a later departure because somebody followed software instead of heat. By the time those cattle hit the yard, they were stressed, blown, and light in the wrong ways. Losses weren't catastrophic, but everybody on the ground knew they were avoidable. Men started saying office decision the way people say storm warning. I kept hearing pieces of it from truckers, buyers, old hands. A pasture on the north side got leaned on too long because the map said forage remained and nobody accounted for how fast that section turned under dry wind. A quarantine shortcut meant to save labor let a minor sickness spread through one receiving group. Denise from the books stopped by my place one evening under the excuse of dropping off mail and ended up standing in my yard telling me she hadn't seen morale that low since Wade's bypass surgery. She won't listen, Denise said. No, I told her. She'll listen, just not before it costs her. The local embarrassment came at a cattleman's dinner in Burnett. Caroline stood up and gave a crisp little talk about modernized oversight, integrated supply discipline, and scalable premium growth. Then one old buyer asked a simple question about why their spring consistency had slipped on 2 recent shipments. Not rude, just direct. She answered with metrics. Wrong answer. In that room, men didn't need a presentation. They needed to believe the ranch still had its hands on the wheel. By the time I saw her again, it was from across an auction yard. She was on the phone, pacing hard, hair coming loose, one heel sunk into the dirt because she'd dressed for control and found mud instead. For the first time since Wade died, she didn't look confident. She looked cornered, and word was already moving faster than she was. One buyer was pausing orders. The bank wanted revised projections. The competitor was quietly asking about distressed acreage. Another storm system was rolling in for the weekend, and half the ranch no longer trusted the people giving directions. That was when I knew it had gone past pride. It still wasn't dead, but now even she had to see the business wasn't resisting her. It was coming apart in her hands. She came to my house after dark. Not the ranch office. Not the sale barn. Not some neat little lunch meeting where she could keep her spine straight and pretend this was still a negotiation she controlled. She drove out to the stone house on the south edge, parked crooked in the gravel, and stood there in the glow from my porch light like she hated every second of being there. Michael looked through the window and said, "That her?" "Yeah." "The one who fired you?" "Yeah." He gave me a long look, then disappeared into the back of the house without another word. When I opened the door, Caroline didn't waste time. "I need 10 minutes. You already took more than that." Her jaw tightened, but she let it pass. "Please." That word surprised me enough that I stepped aside. She stood in my kitchen in a dark coat with dust on the hem and rain starting outside. Not polished now. Not controlled. Tired in the face. Eyes red like she either hadn't slept or had finally run out of ways to act like she didn't need it. "What happened?" I asked. She gave one short breath. "North fencing went down in the storm. A load got sent to the wrong processor this morning because dispatch used the revised routing tree instead of the standing notes. One of the restaurant groups in Austin paused all summer orders until we prove consistency. The bank moved up a review, and the calves in Lot 7 are showing symptoms that my new quarantine protocol was supposed to prevent." I leaned against the counter and let her keep going. She did. "2 trust members are pushing me to sell a section if liquidity gets tighter. Holt Ridge is already circling. They made another quiet offer through an intermediary." She looked at me then, straight on. "And I can't tell anymore which problem is real first and which one is about to become real because I cut out the one person who knew how this place actually functions." That landed hard because it was the first honest thing she had said to me since her father's funeral. I said nothing. She swallowed once. "I was wrong. You'd think hearing that would have felt good. It didn't. Not really. Because by then too much had already bent." She kept going anyway. "I thought I was removing drag. I thought judgment could be documented fast enough to replace the people carrying it. I thought if I moved hard enough, nobody would see me drowning." Her voice dropped on that last part. "I don't know how to fix this without you." Rain hit the windows harder. Somewhere in the back of the house, Michael had gone still, probably listening. I looked at her for a long moment. "You want me to come back and save you from your own decisions?" "No," she said, and there was something raw in how fast she answered. "I want you to help me save the ranch." That was better. Not enough, but better. So I told her what it would cost. I wanted full operational authority on the ground. Hiring, herd management, movement scheduling, health protocols, safety calls, breeding decisions, all of it. Nothing affecting cattle, quality, or workers got changed without my sign-off. Ramon came back if I could get him. Denise stayed protected. The consultant boys were out of field authority by sunrise. And I wanted it in writing, backed by the board, with profit participation and housing terms restored, so I couldn't be thrown away again the minute things stabilized. She listened without interrupting, which told me how scared she really was. When I finished, she asked, "Anything else?" "Yeah. If I come back, you don't get to hide behind language when you're scared. You say what the problem is." For the first time all night, a flicker crossed her face that wasn't anger. It almost looked like shame. "Fine," she said quietly. By noon the next day, I was back at Ralston Creek with board papers signed and half the ranch pretending not to stare when my truck rolled in. Ramon came in 2 days later after I drove to his brother's place and asked him face to face. Denise cried in the office and then got mad at herself for it. I pulled the quarantine crew apart, reset the receiving routine, reworked the dispatch notes by hand, and called every buyer worth keeping before rumor outran us again. Caroline stood there and took it. That was the part one hadn't expected. She didn't fight me in front of people, didn't try to claw back control in little public ways. When I overruled a feed adjustment, she backed off. When I put one of her efficiency boys behind a desk where he belonged, she signed a reassignment. When Ramon told her, flat out, "You don't correct me in front of my men again," she looked him in the eye and said, "Understood." Humiliation, on somebody like her, could have turned mean. Instead it turned useful. And she was useful too, just not where I was. While I was putting the body of the ranch back together, she went after the bleeding I couldn't reach. She met the bank herself and bought us room I didn't think they'd give. She stopped trying to sell us like a legacy brand and started positioning us as traceable, disciplined, premium Texas beef with tighter direct channels and less dependence on one class of buyer. She handled a local reporter after a storm loss story started circling and kept the whole county from acting like we were one step from collapse. She even caught a tax issue her father had buried out of pride, then fixed it before it blew up in a board review. We still fought. Constantly. One night in the office, near midnight, she slammed a file down and said, "Do you enjoy making every correction sound like a personal insult?" I looked at her over the ledger. "Do you enjoy needing the correction?" She stared at me so hard I thought she might throw something. Instead, she laughed once. Tired, sharp, real. "You are an unbelievable pain in the neck. And you were raised thinking urgency is the same thing as judgment." She stepped closer to the desk then, close enough that I caught dust on her coat and the faint, clean smell of soap under a 14-hour day. "Maybe," she said. "And you were raised thinking if a thing isn't written down, it becomes sacred." That one got me because it was partly true. We stood there longer than we should have. Not soft. Not easy. Just too aware of each other and too tired to pretend otherwise. Then Michael banged in through the back office carrying invoices Denise had sent over, and the moment broke like a branch under weight. Good. It was too early for anything else. By the end of the month, the panic had slowed. Not ended. Slowed. Cattle were settling. Staff were taking direction again. Buyers were answering calls. Even the air on the place felt different, like the ranch had stopped bracing for the next bad hit and started remembering how to stand. That was when I realized Caroline and I had crossed into something more dangerous than open war. We had become effective together. The real test came in August, when everything in Texas gets mean at the same time. Heat, dust, thin patience, buyers acting cautious, cattle losing weight faster than they should. And right in the middle of it, Holt Ridge made its move. They came in smiling, same as always, pretending they were offering relief instead of a slow burial. One of their people reached out to 2 trust members about buying the east acreage if we wanted to streamline the core operation. At the same time, they started leaning on one of our biggest restaurant groups with promises of stable volume and cleaner fulfillment. Word got back to us through Denise before the trust could dress it up as prudent discussion. Caroline read the email in silence, then handed it to me. "They think we're weak," she said. We were. She looked up. "Are we still?" That was the thing about her by then. She didn't ask questions to protect herself anymore. She asked because she wanted the truth. "Not if we stop reacting," I said. So that's what we did. I tightened the ranch from the ground up. Rotations got stricter. Movement windows went back to weather logic instead of software convenience. We culled deeper in 2 groups I'd been hoping to save, because hoping and keeping are not the same thing in a dry year. Ramon and I rebuilt discipline with the crews one ugly morning at a time. A foreman named Curtis, who'd been feeding information to Holt Ridge in exchange for a promise job, got caught when Michael overheard a call behind the machine shed and had enough sense, for once, to bring it to me instead of trying to play hero himself. That boy had given me plenty to worry about all summer. Missed curfew, bad attitude, one dumb scene at the feed store that nearly got him fired. But when it counted, he did the right thing. I made him tell Caroline too. She listened, thanked him, and after Curtis was gone she said, "You just saved us a lot of money." Michael tried to act tough, but I saw what that did to him. Nobody had been calling him useful for a long time. While I was fighting on the ground, Caroline went after the fight above it. She boxed the trust in with hard numbers, new projections, and a refinancing structure that bought us breathing room without selling land. She lined up a direct-to-customer premium box program she'd been building in the background, only now it was tied to something real. Consistency we could actually deliver. Then she did the hardest thing of all. She stood up at a regional cattle and food event, in front of buyers, local press, 2 board members, and more than a few men who had enjoyed watching her stumble, and admitted we had tried to run too far ahead of our own foundation. Not in some dramatic way, just plain. We made changes faster than the ranch could carry, she said. That is on me. What matters now is that our quality is back where it belongs, and this operation is stronger because we finally stopped treating experience and progress like enemies. You could feel the room shift. Then came the contract. A restaurant group out of Austin and San Antonio wanted one final review before restoring and expanding the account. If we landed it, we stabilized the season and shut Holt Ridge out of the lane they wanted most. If we missed it, all Caroline's financial work bought us time, not momentum. The week before the review, one of our best bulls tore up a leg in bad footing and nearly wrecked a breeding plan we'd spent months protecting. On top of that, a storm line rolled through and knocked out power at the processing side for half a day. It felt like the ranch itself was asking whether we deserved saving. We answered by staying ugly and steady. No speeches, no panic, just work. I handled the herd, the crews, the timing, the 1,000 small calls nobody notices unless they go wrong. Caroline handled the buyers, the bankers, the presentation, and every clean strategic move that kept the business from getting swallowed while we did the hard part. We barely slept. We argued twice a day. We trusted each other anyway. The review dinner happened at the ranch, not in the city. That was Caroline's idea. She wanted them to see the place, the people, the discipline, not just hear a pitch. Smart move. When it was over, the lead buyer shook my hand first, then hers, and said they were ready to move forward. Not just restore, expand. After they left, the whole place seemed to breathe at once. Denise hugged Ramon. Michael looked like he'd just seen magic happen in work boots. Even I had to stand there a second and let it hit me. Caroline stepped out onto the porch after midnight while the rest of us were still half celebrating inside. She looked tired, dusty, beautiful, and nothing like the woman who had fired me in front of the whole ranch. My father trusted you because you knew how to hold the whole thing together, she said. I leaned against the rail. He trusted me because he knew what this place costs people. She nodded once. I know that now. There was a long quiet after that. Not awkward. Earned. Then she said, softer, and I know what it cost you when I thought I could replace you. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not the spoiled girl I'd blamed. Not the polished outsider with sharp words and bad instincts. A woman who had stayed when it got ugly. A woman who had learned the ranch the hard way and kept standing there anyway. So I told her the truth. You're not your father, I said. That's probably why this place still has a future. She smiled at that, small and tired and real. Inside, somebody called her name. Neither of us moved right away. By fall, Holt Ridge had backed off, the land was safe, the new sales channel was working, and the ranch was finally